Hi guys, on Sunday Tony Blair sat down with Sophy Ridge of Sky News to talk about a number of things, including the Labour Party, the NHS and Brexit. Blair sounded more like Keir Starmer than the old Tony when he started talking about what needed to happen for Britain to rejoin the EU. The interview was frustrating to watch because it was presented in a way that Britain can still cherry-pick aspects of the single market that it likes and ignore what it doesn't. This shift in position could be due to the current Labour Party policy of not providing anything radically different on Brexit ahead of the general election. Have a listen.
That a new government could do. You mentioned Brexit, and some people would say, look, part of the reason, not the whole reason, but part of the reason that our economy is doing badly is because of the knock-on causes of Brexit. Do you think a Labour government should pursue a closer relationship with the EU, given that Keir Starmer's ruled out rejoining the single market and the customs union?
Yes, I do. So you've got rejoining, which I think is very difficult.
Rejoining the EU, you're talking about?
Yeah, rejoining the EU. And the reason it's very difficult is that we've spent 7 years completely diverted in government from dealing with a lot of the big issues because we've had to deal with Brexit. I would love it if it never happened. Obviously, you know that. But I think if you were to go back into a negotiation, actually go fully back into the EU at this moment in time, a future generation, that's another matter. But I think it would be a huge diversion for the government. But the second thing is, I think this country is only going to be ready to rejoin when it's strong.
That makes no sense whatsoever. The country can only rejoin when it's strong. Okay, the UK joined the European Economic Community back in the 1970s because it was the sick man of Europe. The economy was in tatters. And they believed, well, the only way to improve the economy, to grow the economy, is to join this bloc on our doorstep. Now, one of the main driving forces behind the economy being so sluggish at the moment is because of Brexit. So, if businesses can't get access to the workers they need, if investment has dropped and there are barriers to trade, how are you going to have a strong economy? You can probably grow the economy. The Tories have left it in absolute tatters, and you can probably grow the economy to a certain extent. But he's talking about a strong economy. He's not saying about, well, if we have a little bit of growth, perhaps we can show this to the European Union. Look, we're making some progress. Can we come back in? He's talking about a strong economy. But in order to have a strong economy, you need to get rid of Brexit.
You don't want to go back into the European Union on your knees.
There are other things you could do, though. How about rejoining the customs?
Recently, we published a paper that set out a whole lot of things to give us a closer relationship with Europe, including aligning with the regulatory framework in Europe in areas where British business wants us to do so. And then
British businesses want to be part of the single market. They're not interested in this tweaking around the edges. Now, I don't know if Tony Blair believes this or he's saying it to help the Labour Party. And the Labour Party's position at the moment is we're not rejoining the EU, we're not rejoining the single market, we're not joining the customs union. So we're just going to tweak around the edges and improve things in this way. Now, I don't know how they're going to improve things. Of course, closer alignment with EU standards will reduce some checks. But as long as the UK is outside the single market, you're going to have these barriers to trade. And once again, and I've mentioned this before, if the EU the EU is not static, so if the EU move on its rules and regulations, the UK will have to adapt to that as well. But they'll have no choice. They won't be part of the decision-making process. I really don't understand the position here of the Labour Party. They're saying, yes, we want to be a rule taker. We don't want to be a rule maker. Why? Because that's difficult. Because it's hard. Because it's politically hard. Now, I don't know why they're saying that as well, because there's the vast majority of people in Britain now believe Brexit was a mistake, and a growing number want to rejoin the EU. You could still fund the NHS, deal with political issues at home, and in tandem start working towards rejoining the EU.
And cooperating in other big areas around energy.
But we have to be real, right? You said that right now we're in a weak position. Why would the EU give us a deal where we can just cherry pick the best bits. Surely they're going to say, okay, if you want to rejoin the customs union, that means X. If you want to rejoin effectively the single market, you're going to have to accept more immigration from the EU. More.
I really wish the journalists would stop doing this. Yeah, if you want to join the single market, if you want to join, it's not a case of rejoining the single market. You have to be a member of the European Union. This is really the only route. There is another one, but it's pretty much closed off. Let's be honest about this. The real route for the UK to rejoin the single market is through EU membership. And I really wish politicians would be honest with the public and say that. There are other ways, but if you want to be a rule maker, if you want to be back to where you were before, you have to become a member of the European Union.
Payments into the budget. Do we need to be real about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a very good point. So you're going to have to put this together with a whole set of things where we're also doing things that Europe's going to find attractive.
And what do you think we should be willing to compromise on there then?
Well, I don't think it's so much a matter of compromising as saying where are the areas that Europe's going to want us to work with them. And there you can see a lot of them. For example, science, which is one of the reasons why it's so important we rejoin this Horizon programme. There are things that we can do with Europe and for Europe that will help. Also, Europe itself, I think, it also recognises now that the loss of Britain is a problem for Europe. And
I don't know. Now, of course, I don't have my ear to the ground in the same way that Tony Blair has. He has massive connections that I don't have. But in a sense, Europe has moved on from this. They've seen Brexit as a mistake, and Europe has become more united since Brexit. Would the European Union like to have Britain back? Probably, but it's not a priority. And they're seeing what's happening in Britain at the moment, and they're saying, okay, we don't want any part of this. You're still having a Tory government which is banging on about how great Brexit is, when reality is saying the opposite. So I think for the moment, at least, the European Union want to put a bit of distance between themselves and Britain until things are sorted out.
And it is. And when you look at this technology space, the absence of Britain from the room where Europe will decide its regulatory policy for artificial intelligence.
Would you accept free movement of people?
Well, you're not going to go back to do that unless you go back into the single market. But I do think for labour shortages in certain areas, we should be making it much easier for Europeans to come here and to work here.
See, the problem with the ending of freedom of movement is, and this was part of the problem as well when it came to the narrative, was the focus was on Europeans coming to Britain, never Britons going to Europe. We want to stop the foreigners. We're going to take away our freedom of movement, including theirs. And of course, the politicians were never honest with the public when it came to this issue. Yes, you can increase the number of visas. You can try and bring down some of the barriers. But once again, if the economy is not growing, you're not going to attract workers. You're not going to attract workers if you have barriers. So you have to bring down the barriers to trade, you have to attract investment, and you have to attract workers. These three main things have to be satisfied. And I don't see anything really in the current Labour policies that would satisfy any of those.
I'm interested to get your thoughts on Ukraine.
Okay, and that's where we're going to end it here. But it is a little bit frustrating because Tony Blair before used to present a narrative that, yes, we need to rejoin the European Union, Brexit was a mistake. And now he seems to be taking the current Labour Party position of we don't really talk about Brexit, we don't criticise it, we talk about problems, and then here are the possible solutions. But these solutions do not include rejoining the EU, the single market, or the customs union. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.